Some religious concepts will be brought up here today. I am going to read you a story from the Biblioteca, the Bible. That's not how you say it in Spanish. I was informed. That's library, but I call it Biblioteca. But anyways, this is how it's going to get down. I really like this. I'm going to read you a story, and it's actually a story. Like, this isn't like, it's not going to be like it's going to feel like a movie. Like, that's why I like this one. It's a movie. We're going to talk about a boat crash. Are you guys ready? You guys want to talk about it? I'm really, really excited. It's going to be a boat crash. So that is what we're going to go over, okay? And I'm really, really excited for this. So if you don't want to listen to this, unfortunately, we are not required to give you a disclaimer. I encourage you to listen. I'm telling you what we're going to talk about because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want you to be put in an uncomfortable situation. Honestly, I just want you all to relax, have fun, and that's it. You know, we listen to this and we do this because it helps us out a lot, and we like it, you know? Simple as that. So, are you ready or what? Are you guys actually ready for this Philo or not? I hope you are. So we got a few things to talk about. Let's start with the intro, okay? Yeah, still not on CNBC. It has, dude, that plays up 400% now. It's all over the place, but it's looking good. So let me give you the background, and let me tell you guys something. I was listening, honestly, my YouTube. The YouTube recommended me a Joel Osteen again. And I was like, all right, let me listen to Joel. I was doing a lot of driving, and he brought up this story in the Bible with, and again, I don't care what you guys say about Joel Osteen. I know a lot of you guys like to attack the messenger and ignore the message sometimes. That's not what we're going to talk about. But he brought up a story. It was about Paul in the Bible, and I've never heard the story. I mean, I've heard it, but I was like, you know, let me go back and read that story. So I listened to it, and holy crap, something different came to mind for me. So I'm excited to share it with you guys. We're going to talk about the story of Paul, and this is what Joel Osteen said, and I liked it. I really, really like it. He said this one thing, and I agree. This is going to be the concept. He said, "You are going to meet Caesar." That's the point of this story, is that you are going to meet Caesar, and I agree. I think every single one of you has a Caesar in your life where you need to stand before Caesar. That is your job. You have a plan, essentially. That's what it's talking about. That's what this whole story was that Paul had to stand trial before Caesar. So he had to get there. And the point was, regardless of what happens in your way, you are going to meet Caesar. You are going to get to where you're going. And so it's a beautiful, positive point. And that's what it's talking about. But I read it myself, and I'm going to read it to you guys. I got a different meaning from it. Although that is there, that you are going to meet Caesar, what we are going to talk about is simply this: the process of the storm. So after reading this story, I got something out of it that was a little interesting, of how to handle the storm and kind of the processes that occur. So I hope you're ready. Let's talk about the process of the storm. But let me read this for you. Let me pull this up. Where is it? It's like kind of long. Not really. So you ready for this? This is Acts 27. Paul sails for Rome. So this is a story. Just listen to this. It's a story. It's a little different than what you've heard. Okay? When the time came, we set sail for Italy. Paul and several other prisoners were placed in the custody of a Roman officer named Julius, a captain of imperial regiment. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was also with us. We left on a ship whose home port was Adramyttium on the northwest coast of the province of Asia. It was scheduled to make several stops at ports along the coast of the province. The next day when we docked at Sidon, Julius was very kind to Paul and let him go ashore to visit with friends so that they could provide for his needs. Putting out to sea from there, we encountered strong headwinds that made it difficult to keep the ship on course. So we sailed north of Cyprus between the island and the mainland, keeping to the open sea. We passed along the coast of Sicilia and Pamphylia, landing at Myra in the province of Lycia. There the commanding officer found found an Egyptian ship from Alexandria that was bound for Italy, and he put us on board. We had several days of slow sailing, and after great difficulty, we finally neared Cnidus. But the wind was against us, so we sailed across the Crete along the sheltered coast of the island, past the Cape of Salmon. We struggled along the coast with great difficulty, and finally arrived at fair havens near the town of Lasea. We had lost a lot of time. The weather was becoming dangerous for sea travel because it was so late in the fall, and Paul spoke to the ship's officers about it. Men, he said, I believe there is trouble ahead if we go on. Shipwreck, loss of cargo, and danger to our lives as well. But the officer in charge of the prisoners listened more to the ship's captain and the owner than Paul. And since Fair Havens was an exposed harbor, a poor place to spend the winter, most of the crew wanted to go to Phoenix, farther up the coast of Crete, and spend the winter there. Phoenix was a good harbor with only a southwest and northwest exposure. The storm at sea. When the light wind began blowing from the south, the sailors thought they could make it. So they pulled up the anchor, sailed close to the shore of Crete, but the weather changed abruptly, and a wind of typhoon called a northeaster burst across the island and blew us out to sea. The sailors couldn't turn the ship into the wind, so they gave up and let it run before the gale. We sailed along the sheltered side of a small island named Cauda, where the great difficulty we hoisted aboard the lifeboat began. With great difficulty, we hoisted aboard the lifeboat being towed behind us. Then the sailors bound ropes around the hull of the ship to strengthen it. They were afraid of being driven across the sandbars of Sardis off the African coast, so they lowered the sea anchor to slow the ship and were driven before the wind. The next day, as gale force winds continued to batter the ship, the crew began throwing the cargo overboard. The following day, they even took some of the ship's gear and threw it overboard. The terrible storm raged for many days, blotting out the sun and the stars until at last all hope was gone. McDonald's Beyond confirming collaboration. The plays are coming down in premium. It's not reacting the same. So you could make them free. I'm still watching and reading. So all hope was gone. No one had eaten for a long time. Finally, Paul called the crew together and said, "My men, you should have listened to me in the first place and not left Crete. You would have avoided all this damage and loss. But take courage. None of you will lose your lives. Even though the ship will go down, for last night an angel of God to whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me. He said, 'Don't be afraid, Paul, for you will surely stand trial before Caesar. What more, God in his goodness has granted safety to everyone sailing with you. So take courage, for I believe God. It will be just as he said, but we will be shipwrecked on an island.'" So this is where it gets interesting, but I'm going to keep going, but hopefully you guys see the point now. He's a prisoner. He's traveling. He's like, yo, we shouldn't go. They go. Bad weather. Now they're out this. And then all of a sudden, it looks like they're all about to get clapped. And then out of nowhere, he's like, yo, man, don't be afraid. My God is like God. Like, he's like, I got you. And because, imagine how ridiculous that is. Honestly, at that point in time, you hear the context. This guy's a prisoner. This guy's a prisoner trying to tell them what to do. But then not only that, he's saying, you're going to get saved because of me. He says, so God told me that I'm going to see Caesar, so you're going to be chill with that. I think that's interesting so far. I really do. So the shipwreck. About midnight on the 14th night of the storm, as we were being driven across the Sea of Adria, the sailors sensed land was near. They dropped a weighted line and found that the water was 120 feet deep. A little later, they measured again and found it was only 90 feet deep. At this rate, they were afraid they would soon be driven against the rocks along the shore. So they threw out 4 anchors from the back of the ship and prayed for daylight. Then the sailors tried to abandon ship. They lowered the lifeboat as though they were going to put out anchors from the front of the ship. But Paul said to the commanding officer and the soldiers, "You will all die unless the sailors stay aboard." So the soldiers cut the ropes to the lifeboat and let it drift away. So at this point, they started listening to him. So they're really about to abandon ship, and he's saying, nah, don't. He said, if you do that, you're all going to die. So if you actually believe what I'm saying, he's like, nah, don't do that. Facebook, a little chicle. So the soldiers cut the ropes to the lifeboats and let it drift away. Just as day was drawing, Paul urged everybody to eat. "You've been so worried that you haven't touched food for 2 weeks," he said. "Please eat something now for your own good, for not a hair of your heads will perish." Then he took some bread, gave thanks to God before them all, broke off a piece to eat. Then everybody was encouraged and began to eat, all 276 who were on board. After eating, the crew lightened the ship further by throwing the cargo of wheat overboard. So then they don't cut it, and then he's like, eat. He's like, okay, good. You're not abandoning ship, even though you were about to just get on a lifeboat. We should eat. He's like, y'all haven't ate in a while. You should eat. Don't worry. You're chill. Very weird. So when morning dawned, they didn't recognize the coastline, but they saw a bay with a beach and wondered if they could get to shore by running the ship aground. So they cut off the anchors and left them in the sea. Then they lowered the rudders, raised the foresail, and headed toward shore. But they hit a shoal and ran the ship aground too soon. The bow of the ship stuck fast while the stern was repeatedly smashed by the force of the waves and began to break apart. The soldiers wanted to kill the prisoners to make sure they didn't swim ashore and escape, but the commanding officer wanted to spare Paul, so he didn't let them carry out their plan. Then he ordered all who could swim to jump overboard first and make for land. The others held on to planks or debris of the broken ship, so everybody escaped safely to shore. So, that's it. So far, ship crashes, you either swim to shore or you ended up on one of the rocks. So then Paul on the island of Malta. Once we were safe from the shore, we learned that we were on the island of Malta. The people of the island were very kind to us. It was cold and rainy, so they built a fire on the shore to welcome us. As Paul gathered an armful of sticks and was laying them on the fire, a poisonous snake, driven out by the heat, bit him on the hand. The people of the island saw it hanging from his hand and said to each other, "A murderer, no doubt. Though he escaped the sea, justice will not permit him to live." But Paul shook off the snake into the fire and was unharmed. The people waited for him to swell up or suddenly drop dead, but when they had waited a long time and saw that he wasn't harmed, they changed their minds and decided that he was a god. Near the shore where we landed was an estate belonging to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us and treated us kindly for 3 days. As it happened, Publius' father was ill with fever and dysentery. Paul went in, prayed for him, and laying on his hands, he healed him. Then all the other sick people on the island came and were healed. As a result, we were showered with honors, and when time came to sail, people supplied us with everything we needed for our trip. Paul arrives at Rome. It was 3 months after the shipwreck. We set sail on another ship with the Alexandrian ship as it was figured, and then they got to a bunch of places, and then pretty much he was in Rome, and then that's actually the end of the book of Acts. So, do you guys get the story of what happened? So he's a prisoner on the ship. That's the whole story. Now I'm going to explain the process of the storm. Guy's on a ship. He's a prisoner. He says, don't do this. They do it. They end up about to crash. He says, you're all going to be okay. Obviously, he's putting faith in God. Yeah, have faith through the storm. You've heard that before. But then think about how the story keeps developing. So this is what I'm going to talk about. I have it broken down. Because I was listening to this and I was like, man, this reminds me of life, but I'm usually not on a boat sailing to Crete. I'm not in these situations. How does it apply? How does it apply to you? Do you guys not see? You are going to meet Caesar. So if you do have, you do keep your faith through the storm. You all have a destiny, a destination. His was Caesar. He had to make it to Rome. Survive the dark winter, maybe. I don't know. So you want to know what the first part starts with? If this doesn't explain every storm you go through in life, I would be surprised. Tell me it doesn't work like this, just as it did in the story. 1, you should have listened. Again, Paul gave the warning, or maybe people should have listened to you. At some point, somebody should have listened to something that was clearly there, and you didn't. So then what's the next part? You deal with the pain. They didn't listen. It doesn't mean that they didn't listen to him, and then no. He's now on a lifeboat. They're spending days out on sea. It's getting crazy. Should have listened. Now you deal with the pain. So after he's dealing with it midway, what happens? You get the promise. You can't turn back. But then he says, oh, God came to me. I don't know. Maybe you heard something positive on the internet. I don't know. Maybe you stopped giving a shit today. Who knows? Something in your mind, you get a promise that everything's going to be okay. Are you guys following with me? Because that's what happened. Should have listened, deal with the pain, and now all of a sudden he's like, everything's going to be okay. God is going to be good. So he tells them all that, and then guess what happens? The next day, they heard him. They listened to him on that. Now they're like, okay, we should have listened to Paul all about that. But then they were about to abandon ship. He literally said, don't. That's the next step. So after you get the promise you're going to be okay, you don't back out right before the miracle comes. That's what they were trying to do. They were trying to lower the boats, and he said, don't get on those lifeboats. You're all going to die. You can't back out. So you get a little bit of faith, and you're like, okay, you can't back out right before it happens then. And then what happens? What's the next thing he does? He says, okay, don't back out. What happens the next day? It's very, very simple. He says, eat. Now he tells them to start eating. So he says, before you get into whatever you think, I know it's troublesome now, but you got to eat. You need to have food. You have to have energy for it. He says, eat. But think about it. Do you know what eating is? I love it. I love eating. But think about what eating really is. It's something you're supposed to do every day. That's your energy. You're supposed to do that regardless every day. Think about it. All of you eat every single day for the most part, something. That's what he's saying by eating. He's telling you, do what you're supposed to do. Don't let the storm distract you from what you're supposed to be doing every day. You're supposed to eat. You haven't ate in 2 weeks. How many of you? You're supposed to be positive. You're dealing with something bullshit. Why are you not being positive? You're supposed to do that every day. You're supposed to try every day. You're supposed to wake up. Very, very practical. Amen. Very, very practical. Anything to the contrary is not going to help you. So then what happens after he eats? Does it get better? No, it gets worse. So even as you eat and you do what you're supposed to be doing, again, you got the promise a little bit ago. What's the next thing? You still get set back again. But this time, you really should have been clapped, but you didn't get clapped. You got spared some way, somehow. So even after eating, everything goes to shit. Now, they're about to even kill him. He's like, no, we're not going to kill you guys. He said, hey, make a run for it. If you could swim and you make it, you make it. You should have been clapped, but you didn't. So again, even after doing all that, another setback. But eventually, this setback, though, he doesn't get clapped. Facebook on the low. So then what's the next step? Telling you, this is the whole process of the storm. The next step, he gets to the island. He's sitting there, and a snake bites him. And the people are like, oh, that's why. You're a murderer. You did something wrong. That's why all of this is happening to you. You thought you didn't die at sea, but now you can't escape justice. You don't know what step that is? It's quite literal. The snakes in life, they're going to think you're clapped. They're going to think there's a logical reason of you going through what that is that leads to you being dead. The literal snakes in life. And all he does is just shake them off into the fire. God bless you. And then finally, 2 things happen. After that, he starts helping the people. He helps them out and becomes a blessing to them. And they help him get to the destination. They end up hooking him up after he's able to come there and help them out. And then you know how the story ends? He gets to Rome. I love this part, though. It still took him 3 more months. I think it's interesting they gave a timeline. 3 more months. Then he got to Rome. So the point is, all of you guys are going to meet Caesar. But this is the process of dealing with it. You all are going to have your destination, but this is usually the whole process of the storm. You should have listened. You're going to deal with pain. You're going to get the promise you're going to be okay. You don't back out right before it happens. You got to do what you do every day. You're still going to set back, but it should have been a lot bigger of a setback. People are going to clap you. The snakes are going to be there. But then ultimately, you go through and make it through there. You have 2 jobs. It's to bless everybody in the process, and it's to get to your Caesar. You have to, that's it. That was the whole promise. God said you're going to be okay, and everybody around you is going to be okay, because surely you will see Caesar. Without a doubt. That's where some of you are. Some of you think you're never going to see success, money, happiness, a family, whatever it may be. You are already destined to, that's in whether you call it destiny or not, make a damn goal. But what is it saying, though? You're going to see that. You're going to get there. And that's what it is. But understand this process. I think I love this one. That's why I liked it all. So even after all of this, and even once you start blessing people too, give it 3 months till your time. But I just love the timing. Everything about this story is timing, but it's just the process of the storm. You could have saw this as a boat story, but I just saw this as life. Again, if I don't know how, I don't know. Am I the only one who could apply directly to the same process where I've been there, where I should have listened to something, and then I have to deal with the pain, and then I get positive, and I'm like, okay, maybe things are going to be okay. And then I want to quit right after thinking that. I want to cut the lifeboats, but I'm like, nah. You can't quit before the miracle. And then you go about getting in that routine again, but then guess what happens right after? You get clapped again. You get another setback. But then people look at you. People will say, surely you're a murderer. They're going to look at your situation. They're going to look at you shipwrecked. They're going to look at you swimming across. They don't care what you made it through or anything. And they're going to look at you and say, yeah, surely you're cursed. You're probably a murderer. That's what they're saying. They're saying you can't escape justice. That's why it happened to you. Look around you. Come on. He said, surely he deserves that. Ugh. And then, ironically enough, he ends up helping him. So that's why I show some love, honestly. Some of the people that talk shit on you guys today, or that you don't think are supporting you, let me ask you this. Are you going to help them when it's your time to do so? Because it's your responsibility, is what I'll tell you. It's not, I don't care if they called you a murderer. What's going to happen? If you understand this process, you know that you're actually there to help them. So why would you condemn them? Or why would you be salty about that? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. But this is the process. People are going to think you're clapped and deserve it. Then you're going to start blessing people. And even then, even when you start able to kind of turn it in your favor, you're still going to have to wait 3 more months and get up on a whole nother boat just to get to Caesar. That's the process of the storm. So some of you are going through a storm of some sort. We all have problems. I encourage you to see what stage you're at. Are you at the I should have listened stage? Are you at the dealing with pain stage? Are you got the promise it's going to be okay stage? Are you getting ready to quit right before it happens stage? Are you at the stage where I just need to do what I'm supposed to do every day? Am I supposed to be eating right now in the midst of this crisis? Are you at that point where you've gotten past that, but then you got another little setback, but you haven't fully been clapped? Are you at the point in your life where the snakes are saying you're a murderer? Are you at the stage where you're blessing people? Are some of you right in front of Caesar and getting there? Whew. Man. That's why this story got me excited. Because I got to look at this. And I'm like, where do I fall in this? So I encourage you to start thinking about that. Ask yourself what stage you're at. At the end of the day, though, this is what Paul knew. You're going to be good. That's the key. You know, you could focus on my steps. Very, very key here. You could focus on it and say, I'm here and here, but don't forget, it's all based on the promise. He said, surely not a single hair on your head is going to be touched. Surely you will meet Caesar. And everybody around him was taken care of. So, does it really matter? You see what I'm saying? The point is, you could have took this as a simple Bible story. You could have took it as you're going to meet Caesar. But I really saw the practicality of life in this one. that I think it's ironic that however 1,000 years old, this boat trip sounded a lot like life, the same process. Especially as somebody like me, when I'm positive and I believe in stuff and then I get setbacks, it's like I know good things are coming. I know I'm positive. Some of you are the same way. But we still might back out before. We still are tempted to get the lifeboat. You're still tempted to deviate from what you do every day and not eat and starve yourself and deal with so much stress that you're not doing what you need to do. You're still going to get set back after doing the right thing. And people are still like, dude, it's too applicable. So I encourage you to just know what it is, know what's going to happen, and understand this process. And I hope, you see, I think it's so practical that I just hope that this story gives you, and understanding it in this sense, I hope it gives you comfort to at least know where you're at in your stage. I hope so. I hope right now I hope some of you don't cut the lifeboat as you're right in front of the thing. Some of you, I hope you get past I told you I should have done this stage. Oh, somebody told me I shouldn't have done this. I hope you guys don't let any of these stages in this whole process distract you from the main point. That you are going to be okay. But it's not just about, yeah, I'm going to be okay. No, you are going to meet Caesar. Caesar was the king. Caesar was the ruler of the world. Every single one of you has a destiny. You are going to be you have to get to your Caesar. Some of you, it's going to be the first property in your house. It's going to be changing the lives of these people. Some of you are going to speak in Congress. Some of you are going to do a lot of things and change the world, but each one of us here has a Caesar. So I really hope you could apply this so that you understand this, so you could meet that Caesar, so you could get to where you are destined to go. And don't let anything distract you, again, even the worst shipwreck. Honestly. With less hope, the honesty, there was not that. It's hard, man. Just don't let it clap you. And that's it. And don't let it distract you that, maybe it's not going to be okay. It is. So Caesar is a good thing, yes. Because that's what happened. It's just like the process of the same people who called him a murderer. He helped everybody. You don't get that? Come on, wake up. This is for all of you. Somebody in here, you're going to be such a positive impact on the world, you don't even realize it yet. You know that, right? You don't even get it. Because if you're still focused on them calling you a murderer, you're forgetting the other part where you heal everybody in there, where you help everybody around you. He got to Caesar to talk to Caesar and all the people he reached out to in the process, the people's lives that he changed there. And even Caesar really didn't even care. That's it. He brought his case to Caesar to judge fairly and say, why would they persecute me? It's pretty wild. So I think some of you got Caesar coming up. And don't forget that. But understand these processes in the meantime. But I hope you know your struggle is going to be for good. That's the whole point. It's not about what you're going to get. It's the people on the process. He saved everybody on that ship. He saved everybody on the land. He saved all the people all the way to talking up to Mr. Caesar himself. Yeah, it's not about you. Some of you guys, you are going to change the world, but think about it. What's the impact you're going to have on maybe some of you need to listen to this today so you could just learn to eat today. In the midst of the trouble, so you could eat and start doing what you're supposed to do. And maybe somebody's going to notice that about you, and that's going to change the trajectory of history. I don't know. Anything could happen. But the point is, it was about him, but it was way bigger than him. Way, way bigger. But each one of you has to get to Caesar. And each one of you is on a boat. The question is, what's happening, and where are you out in that stage? And are you going to let the environment dictate what you believe? Are you going to let the weather dictate it? Are you going to let what people dictate it by what happened to you and what they say about what happened to you? That's what the question is. So I encourage you all to understand this, understand where you're at. The only reason why you would want to understand where you're at is because it's comforting. It doesn't matter where you're at. You have to know you're still going to get there. Surely you will see Caesar. That makes sense? So I'm excited. I love it. I hope this helps you. I hope you know, regardless of where you're at, you got something coming your way, and don't ever lose sight of that. Be excited about it. Don't let the shipwrecks, don't let the setbacks get in your way. Don't think they're big enough to change what the destiny is. And some of you, your destiny, you may be thinking too small. Because you think that ship, you're like, oh, I wanted to stay on the boat my whole life. No. Your destiny's bigger than that, honestly. So, that is your Philo, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you guys are subscribed. We're live Monday through Friday, 30 minutes before open. Drop your thumbs up on the video. You're on mobile. Press high chat. X out the chat. Hit the thumbs up button. Second link for the nightly watch. This is the main channel. First link for the Scribble Alerts Bootcamp and Real Estate course. Follow me on Instagram at the Trading Fraternity. Keep it positive and respectful. New guys, don't be too shy to say hi or too high to say shy.